The dead can't hear your apologies. That was the message from bereaved families to Boris Johnson as he expressed how sorry he was for the loss and the suffering of victims at the COVID inquiry.
In one of the key moments of Mr Johnson's first day giving evidence, 4 people stood silently in the room with their signs before they were ordered to be removed by Baroness Hallett.
And the 4 women were then ejected from the inquiry, but we have invited them into the studio this morning. Fran Hall, Kathryn Butcher, Michelle Rumball and Kirsten Hackman. Thank you all for coming in. Right, Fran, I mean, so distressing what you've been through already. And then you're there at the inquiry and the Prime Minister who's in charge when your loved ones died says he's sorry. Your husband, Steve, had been diagnosed with terminal prostate cancer and contracted COVID after you just got married.
Yeah.
And you had promised, as part of your vows, and once he was diagnosed with cancer, that you would never leave him on his own. You had to leave him on his own because of social distancing and the fact that you were barred from the hospital. When you heard the Prime Minister, who was in charge at the time, say how sorry he was, what did it make you feel yesterday?
It was a pointless apology. You know, we're nearly 4 years on from when the pandemic began, and he's had plenty of opportunity to actually show and demonstrate that he has regret for his role in what happened. Words at the inquiry, which is there to establish what happened, just didn't cut it.
What do you think he particularly should apologise for? What was the catastrophic mistake you think he made as Prime Minister?
I think we've heard from the inquiry there's a whole series of events and mistakes and omissions. He didn't attend the Cobra meetings. The lockdown was delayed. There was chaos. It sounds like there was chaos. So, you know, I don't know exactly what he should apologise for, but words are cheap and he could do things to demonstrate regret.
And Kathryn, you lost your sister-in-law. She was only 56. I wonder how it felt knowing that Boris Johnson was going to go into the courtroom yesterday, into that inquiry, and you were going to have to hear what he had to say, because clearly you had planned what you were going to do because you wanted him to hear loud and clear how you all felt.
Yeah, it's been difficult throughout. We've been in the inquiry room and listened to Matt Hancock and Dominic Cummings and Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty. We've been there quite a lot. And it's hard to hear the evidence. We've heard the stories in the press over the last 3 years that they've said this and that the body's pile high. But when you actually hear it, you hear it in the room and you're listening to that and everything that you've heard is confirmed, it really makes you feel sick to your stomach. To know that these things were said, to get confirmation that these things were said. And I wasn't looking forward to going in there yesterday. And there was talk about us maybe going back in after we were thrown out, but I didn't want to go back in. I really don't want to listen to what he has to say, and I haven't watched any of it. We were thrown out and I haven't watched any of it. I can't watch it.
Michelle, your mum went into hospital at the beginning of the pandemic. I can imagine for you hearing the words of the Prime Minister about elderly people and the consequences for them were so callous. It must have felt like he was talking about your mum.
Yeah. She went into hospital and she never come out. And the hospital was overwhelmed. In my opinion, she wasn't treated. A DNR was placed on her within 2 hours.
Resuscitate order was placed on her.
Within 2 hours of her entering the hospital.
With no consultation with you and the family to explain that?
No, nothing. And 19 hours later, she died. They said that they tried to explain it to us after they had signed the DNR. But they said that if her heart stopped, we wouldn't restart it. And that was it.
Do you feel if we hadn't been in the situation with COVID, that the hospital would have treated your mum?
Well, I was told on our second meeting with the hospital, if we wasn't in a pandemic, my mum would have been treated. Yeah.
It's even more horrendous to hear. Baroness Hallett had said that the victims of the families are going to be and the victims are going to be squarely placed at the heart of the inquiry, Michelle. Do you feel that? I mean, you're laughing.
No.
Dismissively, you don't feel that's been the case?
No. And with us, because they've approached us so many times when we have sat in that gallery, and yet we can never respond back to them. So with our silent protest yesterday, and we were kicked out, and then we were told at lunchtime we were not allowed back in until after Module 2 was finished.
Would you like to go back in before then?
I did, because obviously I wanted to hear their evidence face to face, but obviously I felt that I needed to do what we done yesterday as well.
And interestingly, clearly, you will feel, and we're talking about it now, and lots of people are talking about it, that yesterday you making that silent protest was perhaps the first time, from your perspective, that the victims have been put at the heart of the inquiry.
Yes, yes.
Kirsten, your mum also went into hospital.
Yeah.
She had broken pelvis.
Correct.
What happened in her case?
She had a fall at home at the end of March 2020 and went into hospital. So she was on the Isle of Wight, which arguably was the safest place in the UK. So it's an island off an island. She was in the hospital's care for 4 weeks, and during talk of discharge, she came back with a positive COVID test. Within a day or two, she was moved into their end-of-life unit, and she was dead within the week. She also had a DNR put on her 2 weeks in. So she went to hospital with a fractured pelvis and had a DNR put on her, and again with no consultation during that time.
And were you able to visit?
Only when she was put onto end-of-life care was I allowed to visit. But I say, because I'm in London, she's on the Isle of Wight, I didn't know whether I was allowed to travel with the restrictions. So I had a real crisis, because it was essential travel only, of if I get stopped by the police, are they going to fine me? Are they going to do something? Because I don't know what the implications are of essential travel. I spoke to the ferry company and went, this is the situation, am I allowed to travel? And they were like, yes, you can. And so I went over and was able to see her in hospital in her final days. But by the time I saw her, she was pretty much unresponsive, so I don't actually know whether she knew that I was there.
I mean, it's so awful what you've all been through, and thinking that there was a reckless disregard for the health of your loved ones. And I wonder if it's compounded, Kathryn, by the fact that you are there in front of a Prime Minister who himself flouted the rules. You know, received a fixed penalty fine. There was a whole load of gatherings that happened at Downing Street.
The most fined address in the UK.
Yeah, and you will lose members of your family, loved ones. You can't visit them many occasions. The funerals that you have to have are smaller or restricted. And meanwhile, there's karaoke machines and broken swings and music blaring out.
That was particularly difficult for us, I think. We were restricted to 6 people at the funeral, with security at the gates of the crematorium to stop us from entering too early, a sort of roll in, roll out. Being wheeled in a metal trolley, because nobody would carry a coffin at that time. Knowing that her body was stored in a leaded body bag somewhere, and the hospital staff weren't prepared to go and retrieve her wedding ring or her jewelleries. There were so many things that were so different to losing somebody under any other circumstances. And I think, so the parties were just such a slap in the face when we'd all suffered in that way, and we weren't able to be with them when they died. There was no visiting. It was really hard, really, really hard.
Your bravery that you're showing by doing this is just immense. I know, Fran, that you've all met through, I can see on your jackets, the National COVID Memorial Wall. It's hugely important to you and to everybody that has lost somebody as well, isn't it?
It really is. And we're there every week painting hearts on the wall, and we know through that of thousands of people who are in the same situation as us. And that's why we do it. You know, we want those people to feel that someone cares.
They've been heard.
Yeah. Thank you all very much indeed. Fran, Kathryn, Michelle, Kirsten, we really appreciate you coming in. When will you be allowed back into the inquiry, do you think?
Next year.
Wow. But will you be watching today's evidence from the Prime Minister?
We'll be outside with banners.
OK. And what do you think about the fact he goes in early, Michelle?
Well, rushes in. There's so much security surrounding him. Nobody can... You just can't see him. He's just so protected, yet our loved ones weren't protected at all.
Yeah. There's an irony there.
He's got so much protection around him, and yet none of our loved ones were protected.
Thank you very much
Thank
indeed.
you all for coming in.
Yeah.
Thank you for having
Good
me.
to see you this morning.
Thank you.